question. If you are in the audience here at Madison College's Goodman South campus, you can write your question on an index card that you should have received coming in. If you don't have one, you can raise your hand and we can get a card to you. If you are on Zoom, please write your questions in the chat.
Ridiculous.
So candidates also have time limits, so we can address as many questions as possible. We are going to give them 2 minutes for opening statements and 1 minute to answer questions and 1 minute for closing statements. We do have a timekeeper to keep us on track. When you get the stop sign, candidates, please wrap up your thought. Otherwise, I'll have to rudely interrupt you, and I don't want to do that. We will move down the table for each question, so different candidates will be first and last to answer. The order that they're seated at now was determined by a random drawing. We have also asked the candidates not to direct questions or criticisms to the other candidates, and we ask the audience to do the same. No cheering or booing when a candidate answers a question. And instead of me reading the candidates' lengthy and very impressive bios, I hope each candidate will choose to introduce themselves and highlight the background, experience, and skills they believe makes them the most qualified candidate for Dane County Executive. So we will start the opening statements with Dana.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dana Pellebon. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Point of Service agencies for having this forum for us. So I have been a part of the Dane County community for over 30 years. And all of my adult life has been spent doing work in the community that affects everyone's day-to-day lives. In particular for the Point of Service agency folks, I have been with Point of Service agencies for the last 12 years, 7 years as the Director of Housing and Operations for Porchlight, where I directed not just the housing policies and created access even for folks who are unhoused, but I also directed case management services and did a full overview with the case management director on what it looked like to serve our clients. I've spent the last 5 years as the executive director of RCC Sexual Violence Resource Center, otherwise known as the Rape Crisis Center. In my time there, we have also honed our services, expanded what it was that we were doing so that we could reach a larger group of survivors. In the 5 years that I've been there, we went from about 5% people of color and LGBTQ folks as clients to currently about 50%. So my life's work has been about creating access and being a part of making sure that human services and clients here in our county get the best services that they need. And my 2 minutes is up.
Wes.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Wes Sparkman, and I'm running to be your next Dane County Executive. I remember starting my career as an intern at the state of Wisconsin's Department of Health and Human Services before it became the Department of Workforce Development. The state didn't present as many opportunities to work directly with people. I believe that getting a chance to work directly to serve the public is one of life's greatest missions and a privilege. I was hired at Dane County Human Services just before I completed graduate school, and I learned about the valuable work of public health before it became its own department, community, youth, and families, economic assistance and work services, adult community services. The work of our Human Services Department and our purchase of service providers
Come here.
is far-reaching and essential. The issues of housing, cost of living disparities, adequate mental health services, recovery services, child welfare, and senior services are complicated. There's no way around that. As a career-long advocate for the best practices, and as your next Dane County Executive, I will activate the audit strategies and assessment recommendations that will set Dane County on track for a future that leads to healthy life outcomes for all Dane County residents. The direct services that we provide demonstrates that our purchase of service agencies are some of our most valuable assets. And as Dane County Executive, I intend to keep it that way.
Thank you. Melissa.
Thank you very much for all of you and what you do for our communities and for engaging in our democracy. My name is Melissa Agard, and I am proud to be a candidate for Dane County Executive. Here in Dane County, we're at a pivotal time, and we need bold, effective leadership in order to move us forward. Dane County isn't just where I live, but it's where I'm raising my family. And I understand the importance of much of what it is that our purchase of service community provides, because as a child, I was the recipient of many of these services. I grew up learning to shop with food stamps. They looked a little bit like Monopoly money back in the day, stapled together. And I stood in a different line at lunchtime to get my food than the lines that other people stood in. I was housing insecure. And it was because of county government that I was able to grow up and dream and believe that I could be a state senator and that I could be a candidate for county executive. However, I know we can do better. My youngest brother died of fentanyl poisoning during the COVID pandemic, and I don't tell you that for sympathy. I tell you that because that is the reality of so many folks in our communities. Racial disparities are egregious and pervasive and generational in our communities, and we need to address these issues. Bottom line, stop. Our county and the work that you all do as service providers and consumers is really about taking care of one another, compassion, understanding that vulnerable people have hopes and dreams just like everyone else, and they should be able to achieve them with the promise of good government. My track record as a proven and effective leader in our community and as a unifier and an unapologetic progressive will get us across that finish line. I am thrilled to be running in this race and look forward to earning your trust and your votes in this election. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina.
I also want to thank everyone for organizing this. This is what democracy looks like, and it is a beautiful sight to see. So thank you all. I am Regina Vidaver, the scientist, public health professional, and experienced leader running to be your next Dane County executive. 2 days before my 15th birthday, my father died of advanced pancreatic cancer. The cancer was advanced by the time they found it, and he was given only a week to a month to live. But he was stubborn. He actually lived for 4 months because he was determined to finish his final semester as a professor at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, which is where I grew up. It was his passing that made me want to be part of the cure. I aspired to be a cancer researcher, and that's what brought me to UW-Madison to do my PhD in molecular biology. But with experience comes learning, and I learned that the lab was just not the place for me. My passions I found in science policy, both in how science is used or often ignored in making policy decisions. Now I serve the state in the Division of Public Health, overseeing our chronic disease and cancer prevention programs, managing a budget of more than $45 million and more than 60 people. I also serve on the Madison City Council, where I put my collaborative leadership skills to the test for my community. On council, my leadership prioritizes coalition building by bringing diverse voices to the table. With this approach, I led efforts to create a zero-interest loan program to increase access to childcare, championed initiatives to reduce our carbon footprint, and finalized plans for the Madison public market. I also pushed for the expansion of the CARES team, which sends behavioral health specialists instead of police to appropriate calls. Dane County is growing rapidly and facing significant challenges that require a collaborative, effective leader to work creatively with partners across the county to address our most pressing needs. With a data and results-driven approach, we can prioritize affordable and abundant housing, invest in mental health, and increase access to healthy, nutritious food, all while protecting our precious lakes and agricultural lands. I pledge to bring my collaborative, effective, data-driven leadership skills to make Dane County a place where everyone can thrive.
All right, thank you. We will start with the questions that were provided by the sponsors of the forum. Question number 1, and each candidate has 1 minute to answer the question. And first to speak will be Wes, as we are alternating the starting candidate. Question number 1, what concrete measures will you take to support housing stability for the community during these challenging times? particularly in light of rising eviction filings, rising rents, and low vacancy rates? What are some of the solutions you would like to see implemented in our community to increase affordable housing for low-income individuals, families, and the elderly, to increase single-family housing and other housing options in Dane County?
Well, thank you, everyone. And again, thank you to our hosts for having this event today. I mentioned that these are very complicated issues. Housing is a complicated issue. I've spoken to developers here in Dane County, and they say, Wes, there's no such thing as affordable housing. People can't pay. There's no such thing. When we develop, we have that in mind. But my goal is to try to at least work toward fair housing opportunities and creating opportunities for everyone. I had the pleasure of working on something called the Economic Stability Council. And just like my plans to implement the Dane County's roadmap to housing opportunities, first and foremost, we would take one project at a time to consider the economic stability, consider subsidizing that project, and making sure that those opportunities are available to everybody.
Melissa.
Thank you. So bottom line, Dane County needs more housing of all types. And this requires the government, nonprofits, and the business community to come together. Dane County Regional Housing Strategy is a roadmap that was already created with collaborative efforts of local governments, industry, nonprofits, and ordinary folks from across our community. And it is an attainable plan. We can get there, but it means 7,000 new housing units in the next 5 years. Starting with definitions of what housing actually means. We need affordable housing, we need single family housing, and we need new housing in our stock. The Bayview Housing Redevelopment is an example of successful affordable housing that provides culturally competent, safe, affordable housing in our communities. And I would like to see more opportunities for projects like that to be planted across the state and right here in Dane County. In addition, increasing wages, creating more affordable childcare, and making healthcare more economical, people will be able to afford housing.
Thank you. Regina.
So this is the point where, enough people have spoken that I say ditto.
Mhm.
I agree. We have a plan. The Dane County Regional Housing Strategy lays out the 17 strategies that we need to approach. This is to bring us to housing and affordable housing. So on the Common Council, I have been part of the coalition that has brought a tripling of the Madison Affordable Housing Fund. That fund has also been done at the Dane County level, and that needs to continue. We need to think about our community area land trusts. These are incredibly effective methods for making sure that folks have access to affordable housing, not just now, but in the future. Also retrofitting existing naturally occurring affordable housing so that it's more energy efficient and better for public health. And then, of course, working collaboratively with our employers in the region, because that is going to be a critical piece. They are the ones who want to bring people here to work. And so they have to be part of the solution for where we're going to put people. So all of these things are laid out very well in this plan. And my goal is to implement every single one of it.
Thanks. Dana.
I have a couple of specifics. So first, on the services end, we cannot keep people in housing if they do not have the services that they need. So we need to work with developers to understand what is coming into our community and then work with our Health and Human Needs Department to say, this is what it is that we are looking at for an increase in need, and then work with the point of service agencies to make sure that we can cover the needs that are there. As far as creating housing, so I was on the county board when we gave the final money for Bayview to be built, and also gave about $30 million to the Affordable Housing Fund. In addition, I want to expand our use of the TID and TIP districts to allow for smaller places to obtain that funding that do not qualify for tax credit funding. We know that tax credit apartments are not actually affordable. So making sure that we also have CCS funding for those who are in housing first.
Good. That was a nice period you put on that. Okay, question number 2, first candidate to answer will be Melissa. Again, 1 minute for the answer. Although there have been recent cost of living adjustments for the purchase of service providers, the gap continues to grow between providers and county staff, sometimes in positions providing similar services. This often results in providers losing staff to the county. What ideas do you have to address this disparity?
So this is a question and a challenge that we have been experiencing in Dane County for well over a decade. Back when I was on the county board, when I chaired the Health and Human Needs Committee, I worked with many of you in this room to figure out how we were going to move forward with that. And I actually found a memo back from July of 2012 where this exact question was asked. We need to roll up our sleeves and get this done. There are some ways that we can do this. The state is sitting on a $3 billion with a B dollar surplus. That money belongs in our communities. With my support and relationships with people at the state and federal level, I will be a tenacious advocate for that. We need to make sure that our mandates are funded, not unfunded. We need to make sure that we're advocating for additional shared revenue, that we bring in additional revenue to the state of Wisconsin, into Dane County, and that we streamline services with our nonprofits, our philanthropy, and well as with our public sector. Thank you.
Regina.
Again, it's really hard when you're going after someone else to say different things. But one of the things that I bring to the table is I am certified in results-based accountability. And this is a process in which you start with the result you want to achieve. You identify the indicators that will tell you if you get there, and then you identify the strategies that will actually get there. I want to implement this with our point of service agencies and the county so that we can really identify who should be in what swim lane, who is best suited to meet the explicit strategies that are needed in our community to meet the needs. And so that we can then fund appropriately, so that we are putting the money in the hands of the agencies that need it for the work that we need them to do and the outcomes that we expect of them. And that we identify what should be in the county's lane and what should be in each of our point of service agencies' lane. And I believe that with that approach, we can identify the budgetary access to ensure that we aren't having such a disparity between wages at our county level and in our point of service agencies.
Dana.
So this is work that we are already doing at the point of service agency level. So we are currently in conversations with the interim director to look at how many point of service agencies do we have, what services are duplicative, what makes sense to conglomerate and bring together, what makes sense to say this is county specific and this is point of agency specific. And then we really need to take a look at the wages and say, okay, so if I am sitting here as a point of service agency and I can only offer a very specific amount, is this the right lane for me to be in when the county does this similar work? So really digging deep into what the services that are available on the point of service side and what is better served at the county level, and then making sure that the wages are as equitable as possible, because we cannot on the point of service agency side continue to do work in the county when we do not have the staffing to do that.
And Wes.
You know, transparency and creativity is really the key to how we're going to all work together. This is going to be a collaborative. And I'm going to quote Baker Tilly's audit and say that typically performance-based and incentive contracts are focused on providing efficient and effective services and may not always limit administrative overhead since payment is directly tied to performance. I mean, for us, the question is, do we want to be budget and output-based or whether we want to be performance-based? It's something that we need to all come to an agreement on. You know, that's something that I'm going to work toward as Dane County Executive. It's something I've been thinking about over my 26 years as a Dane County employee and now as a department head. And I'm excited to work with you all on that.
Thank you. The next question goes first to Regina. Again, 1 minute. Considering the extensive wait lists for mental health services for all age groups, what specific actions will you take to improve accessibility? What are the solutions you would propose and implement to increase the capacity of our community to provide specialized BIPOC mental health services?
You really pick really easy questions, don't you?
Thank the sponsors.
So I go back to my last answer, which is taking a results-based accountability approach. I believe that that is a space that we can work towards. The other thing I'll add is that we don't have our health insurers and healthcare providers in the room, or at least I don't know that we do. And they are part of this conversation and need to be engaged and with us because unfortunately, right, we are in a system in which insurance determines how you will get care, when you will get care, and where you will get care. So we need to work collaboratively and make sure that we are making the most of all the resources we have. And then there's also a pipeline issue. So one of the roles that I have in my day job is working with health professional shortage designations. And we do have effective methods for increasing our workforce shortage issues. And with my knowledge, I will be able to help implement those in the county as well.
Thank you. Dana.
So we did this already at RCC. We noted that there was a dearth of mental health services, so we expanded and created a revenue generating source through our CCS program and also expanding mental health. Now, how are we going to get more BIPOC therapists? We need to make sure that we have a community that is anti-racist across the board to continue to allow for Black folks to live their best life here and people of color to live their best life here. We cannot do that unless we are actually addressing the racial disparities that affect the people that are in that space. And we are currently ignoring root causes while putting Band-Aids on things instead of saying, here are the things that we need to affect in order for our populations of color to be able to enjoy the multiple times voted best city here in Wisconsin, and I believe also the best county here in Wisconsin.
Wes.
You know, we have to claim that this is the best county for everybody. You know what? I think that's actually good for our collective mental health. You know, right now we have disparities in housing, education, business ownership, healthcare. That's kind of my zone as Director of Equity and Inclusion to be aware of that. But, you know, we need the right advocates at the top, people who are aware of the disparities, people who are aware of strategic processes and methods to try to solve problems. We need the right advocates at the top. And a positive attitude goes a long way.
Melissa.
Behavioral health, addiction, lack of housing. We have real problems. We all can agree that our county is rated as one of the best, but we do have generational challenges within our community. And we have great people who really want to solve these problems, who go to work every single day. But we have folks on the other side of that line who are calling for help and are told that there's a waiting list for up to 6 months before they can even answer the call and provide that help. When you're in crisis, you don't have that time. So we need to be more collaborative. We need, as many of the folks have set up here together, figure out how to take barriers down and lift one another up. There is no reason why anyone who is raising their hand and saying, I need help in this community should have to wait 6 months to have that answer provided for them or to even start down that chute. So investing in results-based initiatives that shorten the timelines is how it is that we move our community forward.
Thank you. The next question goes first to Dana. Dane County's human services system was audited in 2014. The Baker-Tilly audit was comprehensive and made some recommendations for Dane County. Some of these recommendations have been addressed, while some of the more time-consuming and potentially impactful recommendations have not been addressed. Do you anticipate revisiting the report and its recommendations? And if so, how will you include the provider perspective into the process?
We are doing that now. So we're currently looking through the Baker Tilly audit and looking at what has not been addressed, and how we are working with our Department of Human Services is we are saying, who is in this coalition? We have over 400 point of service agencies, and we aren't connected to all of them. So making sure that our point of service agencies are a part of the coalitions and being able to have concerted conversations together. And from that point, then being able to go to the county and say, this is what it is that we are looking for based on what is in the audit. And, you know, we are working really hard to try to piecemeal, but we need an actual director of our Health and Human Needs Department in order to move that forward. So the first thing that I will be doing is making sure that that position is filled, because until that position is filled, we can't move forward with any of these initiatives.
Wes.
You know, first I will say that the director of the Human Services Department, I think, is doing an excellent job. This is a huge job, and she should be commended. She's doing a wonderful job. You know, for those recommendations, or for the Baker Tilly audit, there actually were recommendations that were specifically assigned to managers at Dane County. And so that's what I want to do, is follow up with those managers and make sure that they're doing what they said they would do in the report. As I mentioned, this is a big report, but I have a copy of the Baker Tilly's report right here. And that was a while ago. 2014 was a while ago. So it's time to reassess. It's time to look at what the needs are today.
Melissa.
So the reason the Baker Tilly audit exists is because I served on the Human Services Committee, was the chair, and worked with many of you and initiated this process. There are many things that were highlighted in that we expected. And one of the challenges that we continue to see here in Dane County is that we do audits, we do reports, and they sit on a shelf and they collect dust. And there's not a level of accountability to delivering on what it is that these reports are asking for. We have a roadmap here. Do we need to go back and dust it off, update it? There have been changes. How we deliver services to our disabilities communities has changed, right? We have seen change. So there are things that we need to update in here. But rolling up our sleeves and listening to the results of this audit, that is the beginning. And our purchase of service agencies, our consumers, and our county employees deserve to all be at the table in order to make that happen.
And Regina.
As a public health professional, the mantra that I live by every single day is nothing about us without us. And that is what I will bring to this role. So as Senator Agard mentioned, it will be the point of service agencies, the community members, and the county employees who are most affected by these issues coming forward and giving recommendations. So the questions are, why? Why have we not been able to implement the things that were recommended? Probably most of it has to do with funding. As the senator mentioned, there's $3 billion sitting at the state level that is not being brought back to our municipalities and our schools. We have got to continue to advocate for that. We have got to understand the directions that are needed. We have to understand the opportunities that are in the area to make sure that we have, again, each entity doing the role that is most effective for them so that we can truly implement all of those recommendations from the report.
Thank you. The next question goes first to Wes. What issues do you feel are most critical to prioritize as key to violence prevention and promoting community safety? What is the county's role in addressing those issues?
Well, you know, when I think of community safety, I really think on the broader sense, you know, from adult community services, thinking about falls prevention and making sure we prevent, we have assistance for older adults and seniors. Thinking about community youth and families, and thinking about welfare concerns for kids and child safety and welfare. And then, of course, also thinking about recovery and rehab for those who need it. You know, I think all of those critical issues are an important part of what Human Services has done over the last 26 years. And I think that those are really some of the top issues, putting the right services in place. And us collaborating and agreeing on what those services are is important for all of us.
Melissa.
So safety means different things to other people, and it's important that we meet people at their definition. I very much believe that every child in our community needs to know that their dreams matter and that they know that they have a path forward in making that happen. That means that we need to promote public safety. We need transformative and equitable policies. We need to embrace evidence-based, human-focused methods over punishment, intervention and prevention as opposed to after the fact, mental health first responders, alternatives to incarceration, social workers in the schools. Joe Parisi put $2 million into our public schools to support mental health of the kids on the front lines. We have a lot of folks that are canaries in the coal mines in our communities, and letting them be a voice in how it is that we move forward and ensure that everyone has safety, however it is that they define it, is vitally important for our community and will be a priority of mine.
Regina.
So one of the things that I've been able to do on the Common Council is increase funding for our public health department, particularly in violence prevention work. This is critical work. There is a community collaboration around it. One of my colleagues is very closely engaged in that collaborative work. And that needs to continue and be strengthened and solidified. The CARES program is a very important piece of this, where we are, again, sending trained behavioral health specialists instead of police to appropriate calls. Other things that we're doing include parks events, diverse community events that showcase the culture and strength of our communities so that people feel valued and welcomed, so that violence isn't something that is part of their thought process. And most importantly, as a trained scientist, I want to see the data. And that's one thing that I've been really, I'll say, troubled by, is to find that we do not have a common data source across our public service agencies, across our government agencies, to understand what is the actual impact of what our tax dollars are funding.
Dana.
So I am currently working on the roadmap to violence prevention. I've been working with that for the last couple of years. And what we found is that, again, we still do not have all of the people at the table that need to be there. So the work that we're doing in the point of service agency side, where we are coalescing all of the point of service agencies, we're going to plug them in to what is happening on the violence prevention roadmap. Those of us that have been working with this violence prevention roadmap have formed a smaller group to identify the gaps and needs of services. And we are looking at that through the socio-ecological model so that we are holistically looking at these issues instead of saying we are going to focus on one. We cannot focus on one until we are looking at all of them simultaneously. It's the same concept of oppression. We cannot eradicate oppression until we eradicate all oppression, and we cannot change what is happening for violence in our neighborhoods until we look at our neighborhoods holistically.
Thank you. The next question, Melissa will answer first. There is a massive disparity by race in Dane County in who experiences homelessness. This disparity far exceeds observed disparities in poverty rates and other related indicators that might nominally predict risk of homelessness. What can the county do to address the upstream causes of these disparities when we see our homelessness response system?
Housing is a human right. I am a solid believer of that. And as someone who grew up with housing insecurity, I realize the challenges that provides. And I have an awful lot of privilege. I'm white. And I realize that. There are many things that we can do aside from the roadmap with 7,000 new housing in Dane County over the next 5 years. Advocating for increased wages. I'm the lead sponsor of a minimum wage bill in the state of Wisconsin. Creating affordable childcare, advocating for childcare counts at the state level, as well as figuring out collaborative and innovative ways to partner with the trades and the business community. Making sure that healthcare is more economical. Making sure that our schools are funded and our kids have healthy food to eat when they go to school. These are all things that we can do to take pressure off and to ensure that families have access to housing and access to services, and positively impact the egregious racial disparities and generational racial disparities that we have here in our community.
Thank you. Regina.
Gosh, got to figure out what to add. Um, Senator Ayers said a lot of the things that are also on my mind. Housing is should be a human right. We don't treat it that way in our country, unfortunately. But it is something that we need to focus on, which is again why I am so adamant that that is the number one priority for me going forward, is making sure that we implement everything in the regional housing strategy. Childcare is also an issue. On council, I again was able to create a zero interest loan program to increase access to childcare and set that up as an experiment. So don't know if I would say bringing that to the county, because got to find out if it works first. We also need to think about how we're helping people build up their entrepreneurship. So the county and the city have invested in our chambers of commerce, the Black Business Hub. These are places that provide hope and guidance to people. And lastly, I want to make good on Executive Parisi's promise to have us be part of the Guaranteed Income Program. It has worked really, really well in Madison, and I think it can work really well in the county as well.
Dana.
So I've created programs that allow access to housing. The Second Chance program that started in the 1990s effectively created our first Housing First program here in our county. And that program is still going and still housing people today. And these were folks that could not gain access to housing. At Porchlight, I redid what it is that we did for our application process to streamline it, to make sure that there were not barriers to obtaining housing. So the reality is that people of color here in our community experience a higher rate of poverty, and that also contributes to homelessness. And one of the things that I found as one of 15 elected officials across the nation to work on racial disparities in our carceral spaces is that we here in Dane County are doing a lot of that good work. Unfortunately, what's left is purely the racial disparities. And the only way to combat that is to holistically address the root causes. And that includes anti-racism work, that includes economics, that includes housing, and my time is up.
Thank
1 minute
you.
is so hard, you guys.
It is. Wes.
You know, this is a topic that I study and enjoy talking about. And as director of the county's Office for Equity and Inclusion, right now we run the Access to Opportunities program, which was started by previous county exec Joe Parisi. But we have to be honest about how we got here. So redlining existed in Dane County. Restricted deeds existed in Dane County, which set the track and the framework for where everybody lives and the type of housing inequality based on race, the type of housing inequality we're currently trying to address. So we need to be honest about that. We need to pull more educational opportunities about that. Begin to talk about home ownership for everybody, business opportunities and jobs.
Thank you. The next question will go first to Regina. How do you see the role of community organizations and nonprofits in supporting the child welfare system? And what strategies would you implement to foster collaboration and equitable partnership between these entities and government agencies?
Our community organizations are the lifeblood of support in our community. So they're critical in making sure that our children are loved, looked after, and that we have a space where they can be safe and identify any problems that are arising. So this has to be something that is taken up collaboratively across both the county and our community organizations. In talking with folks through the DOJ, I've come to understand that the county is actually doing very well in terms of addressing youth who are involved in the carceral system, but it's very difficult, again, to get to those root causes and to strengthen families. And it does come back to those root things about housing, education, jobs, healthcare. Those are all the things that we have to continue to coordinate on as a community to ensure that our children are able to thrive.
Dana.
So let me tell you about the work our point of service agencies are doing here in this county. We are advocating. We're advocating every day in those spaces. We need to have more conversations in those spaces because currently we kind of go into meetings, we advocate the best that we can with that parent, with that child, and then it goes off into the ether, right? And so what we have been talking about is how do we get the department heads and the agencies to actually sit down with point of service agencies and talk through what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. And again, what our point of service agencies does best, in my opinion, is advocacy for their clients. And in those spaces, when we have parents that are afraid, children that don't understand how the system works, to have someone with them to say, this is what this looks like, and then can speak the language of those who are in charge and make sure that they are, that their rights are being respected and that they are getting the services specifically that they are needing and ask for. That is the work we already do.
Thank you. Wes?
I'll ask, I think maybe we've gotten off track a little bit, but I'll ask you to repeat the question if that's possible.
Oh, yes. How do you see the role of community organizations and nonprofits in supporting the child welfare system? What strategies would you implement to foster collaboration and equitable partnership between these entities and government agencies?
Well, you know, the budget related to overall human services department is sprawling. And I think we need to be honest about that as well and have a conversation about responsible care that leads to healthy outcomes. And I think we all should start to think about and agree on what those healthy outcomes really mean. My vision for Dane County is to see a county where everyone has an opportunity to grow and thrive. And so in our city county building, the juvenile department is located in the floor right under us. So I'm reminded. I go visit from time to time. They offer the opportunity for us to go and many other leaders to go and visit with the young people. That's our future. And I care about them. And I think when we all have the opportunity to be advocates, we all need to stand up and do our job.
Melissa?
So I have said it before, and I will continue to say it, that every kid must know that their dreams matter and that they can achieve anything. And Dane County needs to be a community that embraces that. So we have amazing community organizations and nonprofits who care deeply about children and child welfare. We need to increase transparency. We need to increase collaboration. We need to make sure we are providing voice to those who have the lived experience. We need to be clear about what our definitions are. We need to embrace our birth to kindergarten crew, childcare, culturally appropriate childcare. We need to make sure that we are investing in parents who are on the edge, who need additional assistance. We have amazing organizations out there. Youth mentorship, decentralizing services, making sure we are providing them where people live, work, and play. Investing more in social workers, especially social workers. I'm sorry, sometimes words are hard. Social workers who are trained in culturally competent and culturally embracing visions. Thank you.
All right, the next question, we will start with Dana. Providing service in the language of the participant is a contractual expectation of providers. We have seen a substantial increase in the need for the use of interpretation and translation services, and many providers have increased hiring of bilingual staff. Providing these interpretation services are not only contractual, words are hard, expectations, but important values of providers as well. Yet they are unfunded mandates in the contracts. As the county executive, how would you approach this challenge?
Fund them. So currently, we hire bilingual, bicultural staff because it's not good enough to just be bilingual. You have to really understand the population that you are working with. In addition, the language line isn't good enough. It's not. So we've been using other agencies like Purple and Interpreters Co-op to have interpreters come to space because that is equity. That's what equity actually looks like. In addition, when I was on the county board, I noted that language access was not a part of our equity plan. So that's something that I pushed for. And so now it is. So really it is about saying, this is the problem, here's how we're going to fund it, and moving that forward. So that's what I would do.
Wes.
Yeah, we really need to think about what type of difference we all really intend to make and have. And I agree that culturally competent services are the services that are going to produce the results that we really need. I was fortunate with the help of the county board and the county exec to have hired a language access and a reporting specialist in our department. And that's something that person is working right now, and it's something we celebrate. It's a big job because that individual has to work with the sheriff's department. Will be working to assist the language access person and human services, and working to assist all of the departments. And it's going to be a challenge, but that is exactly what we intend to do. That's what I advocated for in my department. We've successfully did that, and we're going to look for opportunities in all the departments, and each of them have individual, unique needs, and find out what we need to do and work with the POS agencies to make sure we're communicating what works.
Melissa.
In order for people to be able to thrive and succeed, they need to be able to have access to services. And when language and culture are barriers there, we're not doing our job. And it is government's job to make sure that we're lifting everyone up and providing opportunity. Unfunded mandates are challenging. I've already brought that up. It is vitally important that we are advocating at all levels of government, including with our state government and our federal government, for the dollars that we deserve to be able to provide the services to folks, especially vulnerable people in our communities. One of the ways that we can do that is provide internships and paths forward for people who are bilingual, to be able to become social workers and to become folks who are providing these services in our communities. And with that, we will increase our workforce. We will increase opportunities and provide good paying jobs to additional people across to Dane County as well. Thank you.
And Regina.
When 13,000 Afghan refugees landed at Fort McCoy, I was privileged to lead the incident response for the public health response. And that was a great crash course in understanding how difficult it is for folks coming here with a language and cultural barrier to access services. So we had to be able to really struggle to get people who knew the languages to be able to come in and do translation services. It was not easy, especially with that large influx at one time. But the commitment was there and the funding was there. And that's what needs to go forward in the future. What I've done at the city level is be able to help fund navigators for the city in Spanish and in Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, because those are the languages most in need at the city level. I also think that we need to talk about Medicaid recoupment. That is a space where they should be covering translation services. And that is a space that we can probably increase our opportunity to bring forward those funds.
Thank you. All right. We're winding down on the sponsors' questions, just a couple more, and then we'll get to the audience questions. The next question goes first to Wes. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is under attack at the national and state level. What is your vision to support DEI in the county departments and with community organizations? Additionally, many providers have made substantial investments in their organizations to be more diverse, equitable, and inclusive. Do you have a plan to allocate specific funding for community agencies to support their DEI efforts?
Thank you for that question. So as a director of the Office for Equity and Inclusion, I know it's valuable. And I know that we can make progress. My department was recognized by the National Association of Counties for our innovation and our ability to reach every single department in Dane County. Let me tell you what we focus on. We focus on management positions. We focus on a conversation that talks about the qualities that we really want to support our whole county, the background, cultural competency in our management staff, and that impacts everything else that we do. So, yes, I value equity and inclusion. I do believe there's a future for civil rights as it relates to making sure we have inclusion and opportunities. And of course, we have to think about the jobs that need to be produced and business ownership opportunities.
Melissa.
So as a state senator, I've been on the front lines here in Wisconsin watching the direct attack on DEI. And it is toxic and it is unhealthy for our community. It's not good for our kids. It is not good for businesses. It's not good for our friends and neighbors. We need to stand up against it at all levels. And we need to ensure that everyone knows that Dane County is a place where people can be safe and where we're going to have their back. Whether we're talking about who someone loves or what color their skin is or what zip code that they were born in. This is the fabric of who I am, and it is the fabric of what Dane County prioritizes. Bringing people together again, making sure that we are listening to one another, finding out, identifying where those cracks are, and putting all of our effort in ensuring that they do not become fissures within our community is how it is that we continue to protect DEI. And again, we need to make sure that we are getting our fair share of shared revenue from the state of Wisconsin so that we can invest in these priorities.
Regina.
I'm giving 2 snaps to that one. Diversity is strength. And that's something that we have to continue to be conversant in all of what we do, whether it's in the county, in our point of service agencies, in our schools, in our community as a whole. As a public health professional, I have been trained in how to actually develop language that stays away from buzzwords, shall we say, that rankle certain people, but still can get the point across. So there is a way for us to make sure that our language is meeting our needs and that we are giving that technical assistance to all of our point of service agencies so that they too can use that language to generate public support for the work that they do. We also need to, of course, identify the outcomes that matter and fund them. So if we're saying that, for example, we have a disparity in mental health outcomes in our folks of color, then we have to say, well, what is the outcome that we can achieve if we concentrate there and then fund that to make it happen?
And Dana.
Is mandatory. The work that I do already across the state for equity includes training on what does it look like for your job placements? What does the job qualifications have? How is it that we have a workplace that is set up to be successful for people of color? What are we looking at for our grant applications? These are all things that I currently train on for DOJ. It's something that I did for our department managers here in Dane County when they said, how do we then take the next step? Well, the next step is action. And so what I did at RCC to move people from less than 5% employment and less than 5% client base to more than 50% both is that I made sure that our job postings and that our service delivery was equitable and had access for everyone.
Thank you. All right, the last question from our sponsors. Melissa will be the first candidate to answer. This is a tough one. Are there any issues or priorities that we have not talked about so far today in the forum that you would like to address?
Yeah. Lots of them. I think that it is vitally important that we continue to lift up environmental protections. Protecting our environment is a social justice issue. County Executive Parisi and County Executive Falk both made this a big part of who they are and what it is that they worked on, and I am honored to have both of their endorsements moving forward. We need to keep our foot on the gas when it comes to that. We need to make sure that we are addressing addiction in our communities. As I said, I lost my younger brother to fentanyl poisoning. This is not a unique story, but being able to support people and provide them paths forward to a healthier lifestyle is something that that we can do. We're receiving funding from federal settlements, and we need to get that right, because that money is coming here because people like my brother lost their lives. So environmental protections and addiction are two areas that I think that we can and will continue to work hard on.
Thank you. Regina.
In addition to those, we haven't talked too much about transportation and accessibility of that transportation. So folks need to be able to get to the places they need to get to, whether it's for medical appointments or, sports or whatever it is, and have that not contribute to climate change. So we have to continue to think about sustainable transportation, making sure it's accessible to those who might have a disability or, lower income, whatever that is. That they need the help with in order to access it. We also have not talked about access to healthy, nutritious foods. So the county has a USDA grant to study our food service delivery network. And I am absolutely devoted as a longtime member of the Madison Food Policy Council, ensuring that work is, again, once we have the plan in place, that is implemented, and that we can provide funding where it is needed to ensure that everyone has access to healthy, nutritious foods when they need it.
Dana.
So we haven't talked about our criminal legal system, and that is a very large portion of what it is that's happening in our county. So the things that I want to see are the things that I want to continue. So I want to continue to build out our community court. That is a higher level of restorative justice court here in our county. I also want to really look at how it is that we're going to be administering our Huber program out of our Human Services Department. So that is moving, for those of you that don't know, that is moving to our Human Services Department. And what does it look like post-conviction for us to have services in the place where services reside, instead of always working from the back end? So that is the two areas very specifically that I want to see built out, because they will have immediate impact on our county residents.
And Wes.
There are a lot of topics, and we're going to work together to solve these issues, collaborating with the Sheriff's Department on criminal justice issues. That's going to be a huge part of the job of the county executive. We haven't spoken enough today about services for seniors. Seniors have played a major role in all of our lives. They have set the county on the track for where it is right now. How will we give back to the seniors? What are we going to do? How are we going to make sure that we're looking out for their best interests as well? And not just in adult community services, but all around. I have an appreciation for the arts, appreciation for music, comedy. I think that's all part of healthy life outcomes, and we need to bring that out and talk about that. Public health, brain development, and overall health of the brain and development over time. That's something else that we should talk about, and I think it just leads to healthy outcomes overall.
All right. So now we will get to this stack of cards on my podium. And believe it or not, we're right on time. We are just about 12:30 now, and another half an hour to go. Here's the first question, and this will go to, I think I lost track. No, this will go to Regina. By 2040, 1 in 4 people will be over 60 years old in Dane County. Currently, 4 out of 10 older adults live alone. How do we address social isolation and loneliness, which the Surgeon General calls a public health epidemic? The Area Agency on Aging has a program budget of $20,000. Help. So how do you help, Regina?
Yeah, I mean, this is absolutely critical. Social isolation and loneliness is a major public health threat, and was obviously only worsened by the pandemic. So we have our fantastic ADRCs, which is a space, but people have to reach out. So how are we going to be proactive? And that does really take community members identifying folks, their neighbors, and saying, I haven't seen this person in a while. Or members of faith communities coming together and ensuring that they're checking in on members. The county's role in that might be in mini grants, for example, might be in, again, continuing to support our ADRCs. But even the Meals on Wheels program, that is also a method of impacting that loneliness and isolation by bringing people to folks' doors and making sure that they have that social engagement at least sometime during the day, and bringing them then out to senior centers, which we also need to continue to fund.
Dana.
So one of the things that I do on the side is event planning. And that is also wrapped around with arts and pleasure activism and pleasure spaces. Just this weekend, I was on a cruise with Black women from the age of 20 to 90, because we understand in our community that we need to have spaces where all of us can be in community together. I have created festivals, and I have done a multitude of art spaces that include the people like me that'll be 60 in the 2040. Ooh, y'all. So realistically, we have spaces that can be supported, and even a small grant can support big work. And so looking at the funding that we have, I was able to get another $40,000 in our art spaces in this last budget. So what does it look like to use that space to create community spaces that have multi-generational people in it, so that there is always a place for community for everyone?
Wes.
I've got to echo the thoughts and say again, the thoughts about arts and its relationship to aging and brain health is so critical. Doing things for all of us, doing things as a group, socializing, talking to people, it's good for our brain health. And so that's something that I'm going to keep continually saying and support myself. So collaboration is important, but also being a better neighbor. Being a better neighbor, checking on your neighbor. How's your neighbor doing? Right now, I'm working on getting 100% of yard signs in all my neighbors' yards and talking to them and having a good time. I'm working at it. I'm doing all right, getting there. But it's important to check on your neighbors and see how they're doing. I think that's a part of the whole process.
All right, thank you. Next question, we'll go
If you
first.
want me to answer?
I'm
or not?
sorry.
It's
I
okay.
did get
I
mixed
didn't know
up. Go
if
ahead.
I'll answer
No,
the next question.
go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
So social isolation and loneliness is something that I think we are all very familiar with after the COVID pandemic, but it definitely does affect our seniors. And there are things that we can do, proven things, multi-generational opportunities. We have this real need for more people to engage with our kiddos. And we have grandmas and grandpas and older people who are hungry for the opportunity to engage with more people. There was a trend a handful of years ago to centralize services, and let's get back to decentralized services. Let's get back to community centers that have multi-generational opportunities for food, for access to services, for activities. And this is going to take, again, the government, our business community, and our philanthropic community to bring our barriers down and learn to trust one another, because our parents and our grandparents, our seniors, deserve all the respect and dignity and opportunity to recreate and hang out with folks. Thank you.
And I apologize for that. I was eager to get to some of these great questions that our audience submitted. This one is maybe a little long, but I think it's good to give context and background. The first person to answer will be Dana. People in a mental health crisis often need someone to call. A few may need someone to come to them. In an acute crisis, there are some who may need a safe place to go. Dane County has a 24/7 crisis line, crisis response teams, co-responder teams, and voluntary short-term crisis residential beds. But we need a one-stop 24/7 crisis response center where anyone in crisis can walk in or be brought by first responders to get immediate psychiatric crisis care. Without a center like this, people sit in emergency rooms for hours going through medical tests, and far too many end up being taken by law enforcement to Winnebago Mental Health Institute in Oshkosh. Some end up in jail with minor charges associated with untreated mental illness. What would you do as Dane County Executive to make sure that the Crisis Triage Center opens?
So there are barriers at the state level that we have got to clear before we can move that forward. So until then, the point of service agencies have been filling that gap. I run a 24-hour crisis intervention service where we show up 24 hours a day. We have a helpline that is available 24 hours a day. And I am one of many. There are several of us. I think about Journey and their crisis line and the incredible amount of burden, let's be real, of burden that is placed upon one agency to be that space. So we need to engage our state legislators to change the laws that should have been changed years ago. And then move that forward here in our county. And from that point, also engage the communities that are already doing that work and the agencies that are already doing that work to make sure that the work that they are doing is sustainable.
Wes?
Yeah, I want to highlight the work of Human Services Department in this area. I want to highlight Journey and Tellurian. As a former police and fire commissioner, I served for 10 years as a police and fire commissioner and 2 times as president of the commission. Crisis, we got to be ready for emergencies. A county executive has to be ready for emergencies. There are important challenges that we face. I agree that we need a response center that serves everyone 24 hours. But I also agree that that's going to take collaboration with the county board. It's going to take collaboration, of course, with the county executive's office and the state legislature. So we have some work to do on that.
Melissa?
Mental health and behavioral health care is a vital service that we need to be providing in our community. And it's absolutely egregious that many of the people that are on the brink actually end up in the criminal justice system as opposed to receiving the care that they need. I have my favorite uncle when I was growing up was bipolar and schizophrenic. And when he was on, he was on. We read books together and we hung out. And when he was off, he was scary. And we know folks like that in our lives. Having a center right here in Dane County is a priority of mine. There are funds at the state level, and we need to be advocating to get that center opened up here. In the meantime, our 911 operators are trained to divert people from the police to mental health operators. We need to expand that program. We need more mental health first aid services in our communities as well. Understanding that behavioral health is part of holistic health is vitally important.
Regina?
There's not much that hasn't been said on this topic, but the question was, what would you do as county executive to make sure the crisis center opens? And my response is everything possible. This is an absolutely critical need in our community. And as the senator said, it is really reprehensible that we don't have it right now. So we do have now folks, they should have just been hired in the 911 call center to be able to actually be able to take the calls and address people's needs without even sending anyone out to the site when that's possible. Again, I have advocated for expansion of the CARES team, and I will advocate for expansion of that throughout the county. The other thing I've done on council is to be able to help transition to an alternate transport service to Winnebago. So again, we do not want to be transporting folks to Winnebago. We want to be able to have them cared for in our community. But in the meantime, having police take folks there is not a good use of resources, and it is not good for the folks who need that care. And so I have been at the forefront in helping to have that alternate transportation for folks who need to go there.
Thank you. Next question goes first to Wes. Can you talk about some of the successes we have seen in Dane County, especially initiatives or projects that you have been a part of?
So I mentioned the county's Access to Opportunities program for that we all work together on. Our department is a relatively new department, Dane County Department, 7 years. I'm glad to say that I'm the first department head of the Office for Equity and Inclusion. And a lot of work went into that. But the work that we do is more important. So we've started a driver's education scholarship program that is helping young people get licenses so that they can get to work. And that's been something that even one successful driver's license can change a life. So that's something that we've enjoyed. Our office also has something called the Partners in Equity Grant. So the Partners in Equity Grant has a criminal justice focus, and we've been able to provide thousands of dollars of support to community agencies and partners in the community on not just criminal justice, but we've also expanded to food assistance.
Melissa.
Dane County is a pretty special place. I was born here, raised here, and I'm raising my 4 boys here. What we've done as leaders, environmental protections, is to be celebrated, lifting up our kids. When I was on the county board, I created a youth and governments program, which continues to exist, the By Youth for Youth grant programs in addition, and the Youth Commission. Our celebration of local food, we just saw that on the Food Network. Surrounding ourselves with robust arts, parks, and open spaces that we can hang out in, and really protecting the quality of life. There is a reason why when abortions became legal again in Wisconsin, that Dane County was one of the first places that Planned Parenthood started providing reproductive health. There's a reason why after marriage equality was legalized, that Dane County was the first county in Wisconsin to have a same-sex couple be able to recognize their partnership. We are a special place. We need to continue lifting each other up and lead with compassion.
Regina.
Dane County is a fantastic place. It's why it's the most growing area in Wisconsin. Having just gotten the tech hub, we now are expecting another 30,000 jobs over the next 10 years. So it's going to grow even more. We have a lot of good things happening. So what I've been able to accomplish so far on the Common Council includes getting the Madison Public Market across the finish line to ensure that entrepreneurs have a space where they can be valued and grow their business. Expanding the CARES program, which again, I wish to do across the county. I've also voted to expand public health funding for our reproductive health and family planning services after the fall of Dobbs. That was critically important that we have that those resources in that space. I've been able to champion efforts to reduce our carbon footprint in the city, and we'll take that to the county with our programs around building energy savings and transportation demand management. I've been able to help increase our affordable housing fund, and by simply voting on developments, increase our housing stock, and also be able to champion our Clean Lakes Clean Streets program.
Thank you. Dana.
So I'm going to be clear that none of us have done anything on that line. That is all our county staff and our county employees. So we can vote for things that make things easier, but I look at people who run programs like Jan at Project Respect. We have services for victims of human trafficking because Jan and her staff make that happen. Our job is to support our county folks who are already out there doing the work. And I can go through every vote it is that I did, but at the end of the day, that's not what it is that we do. What we do is support the people that are doing the work, make sure that they have a sustainable place to do the work, make sure that they have the funding to do the work, and that they are able to connect with the community partners and the point of service agencies and the community themselves in order to make that work sustainable and holistic.
Thank you. Our next question will go to Melissa first. How would you seek to balance the growing need for services against the soaring cost of property taxes? By one report, the median annual property taxes paid by Dane County homeowners is $5,853, the highest in the state.
It's clear this is a real problem. Many people that live or that work in Dane County don't live in Dane County. They are driving from other places. Part of it is because we don't have enough housing. Another part of that formula is the fact that our housing is too expensive. We need more housing stock. That's supply and demand. When we have more stock, we're able to have more control over what it is costing. We also need to advocate for increases in minimum wage. Wisconsin is one of the very few states that has not increased wages for the people that work here. And the dignity of work deserves to be compensated when you're going to work and making a profit for your boss. We need to make sure that we're expanding healthcare access in the state of Wisconsin additionally. That is a huge expense for individuals, nonprofits, and businesses. With that, we're going to be able to invest more in our communities. Access to childcare and the cost of childcare needs to be addressed. When we do this, we will be able to level out and provide more services, more cost-effective living here in Dane County. So
Thank you. Regina.
We've said this before, I'm going to just say it again. State's sitting on a $3 billion surplus. And we need to continue to advocate for that shared revenue to come back. Madison was the second lowest per capita shared revenue receivers in the state. It's simply unfair. So we have to advocate for equity across the shared revenue. We also need to advocate, frankly, for a local sales tax in our municipalities. We do have it at the county level, and that is quite frankly why the county is not having nearly as many issues as many of our municipalities. And along those lines, we need to promote tourism so that we get that sales tax revenue and reduce impact on local property taxes so that we can all benefit. We always are looking to identify efficiencies and make sure that we are using our tax dollars at our very most optimum level, and we need to continue that process. Again, if we use that results-based accountability process, we will get there faster.
Dina.
I want to directly affect our property taxes by looking at what it is that we are spending. So we currently do not have a capital improvement plan. We have been building, we have been borrowing, and we have not been looking at our debt service when we are doing that. So moving forward, that's going to change. I am going to only allow borrowing that matches what it is that we have lost in debt that year. So does that mean that we are going to stop some of our capital spending? Absolutely, it does, because we do need to get a handle on it. We need to understand where our money is going. And we need to be very strategic in where it is that we are spending our capital dollars, because I will tell you, as a county board supervisor, the number one call I got was when our property taxes went up. So I am going to make sure that they stay at the same level or lower.
Wes.
Yeah, I agree. It is a sprawling budget. The regional housing strategy, and in reading through the regional housing strategy, they highlight a 6-point approach to addressing these issues. It starts with accountability for the tax dollars that are being spent, affordability, and thinking about how we stand in relation to other states and the cost of living in other states. Economic growth. We're going to have to continue our growth. All of that growth, that's Sun Prairie, Stoughton, all the surrounding cities, towns, and villages. We all have to grow. Empowerment. Making sure that we empower people as it relates to business ownership and opportunities, and making sure everybody's connected. Of course, equity and sustainable development over time.
Thank you. Next question goes first to Regina. What process would you use to hire department heads in Dane County?
So I just want to highlight that I've been a manager for 25 years. I've been a manager of managers for nearly 20 of that. So extraordinarily familiar with the hiring process. And it's an interesting space to see how that process plays out in municipal government. Quite frankly, I think that what Madison does in terms of hiring department chairs on 5-year contracts so that they cross mayoral terms is a very valuable approach. And it's one I would really want to look at for the county. I know that some folks are hired on contract and some are not. And I would really want to look to seeing what impact a contract-based approach would have, both in terms of bringing in appropriate talent, but also, ensuring that folks are protected from changes in administration when they're good people.
Dina.
So I've also been hiring here for about 30 years here in our county. And the first thing I would do is I would stop political hires. There should be no political hires in spaces. Instead, what I want to do is make sure that the job descriptions are equitable, allow for access to these spaces that makes sense. Instead of a 17-point list of things that people need to have, does it make sense for them to have all 17 things, or what is equitably what is needed for this position? And then have a hiring process that is transparent and clear. And then from that point, ensuring that I am communicating every step of the way of what that hire looks like and why it is. And that includes sharing resumes, sharing the interview information so that when I put forth a hire, there is not question about that it was an equitable process and that the best person for that job was chosen.
Wes?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with transparency. I think that's important. I'm a student of human resources and human resource management and good strategies for human resources. But so one of the most important things for state and local government is the ability to move quickly. So there's talent. There are a lot of talented people out there, and we need to have the ability to move quickly, but also talk about being transparent about the qualities and the capabilities and the backgrounds of the types of individuals that would make great department heads. I'm a department head right now. I think the county executive made a great choice. And I'm enjoying my job, you know, and I think that's important. But the ability to enjoy the position, somebody that can flourish in the position, but talking about those qualities are so important ahead of time.
Melissa?
The folks that run our departments are really the fabric of our community. They are ambassadors for the work that we are doing, and they keep the wheels on the road. We need to do this in a transparent manner, and it needs to include public input. When I was on the county board and we were looking to hire folks, we held listening sessions to figure out what it is that the community cared about before we even came up with the job description. Then that was put out. And then we got the resumes and they were vetted, and the top folks were then brought out to the community and painted their vision and asked questions. I think that we also need to include diverse members of folks on the hiring panels, especially folks who are most impacted by whatever the position that this person does.
Thank you. Well, we're running short on time now. I'm going to give one final question before we have time for closing statements. We've talked about a lot of issues today, and I've got some more cards on my desk here. But I'm wondering if, I know you have a lot of priorities, but you need to just pick one. What is your priority on day one? What is the issue that is most important to you that you think is most pressing to Dane County? Dana?
Hiring a director for the Health and Human Needs Department. That is priority day one.
Oh, that was good. Wes?
Communication and expertise in team building.
Trust. None of us can do anything if we don't have the trust of one another. The trust of the folks that work for the county, the trust that the county serves, and the trust of one another.
My top priority is housing. We've talked a lot about the needs in our community, and my career has always been in health. And if you do not have a stable place to lay your head, we can never expect you to be healthy. We can't impact your behavioral health. We can't impact any issues with addiction you might have. We can't impact your education. We can't impact your dreams of being an entrepreneur. So housing is my number one priority. And again, my goal is to start on every single piece of the Dane County Regional Housing Strategy and on day one.
Well, you were quick in answering that question, so we might have a minute or two, but let's go to closing statements, and we'll reverse the order from opening statements. You each have 1 minute to give us your closing statement, starting with Regina.
I really hope that what you've heard today is that all of us come to this space as caring, committed members of our community. There's not one of us who is a California businessman trying to buy the seat. And what I want to leave you with is that the position of Dane County Executive is one that I can do. It is an executive management position. I bring that experience in spades. 25 departments to oversee. You need someone with the management acumen to be able to handle people, programs, and budgets while ensuring that your tax dollars are spent on the priorities that make all of our lives better. You also need someone who puts your health and your future first. With my background in science and public health, you can be assured that I will spend all day, every day, working to make sure that Dane County has the resources and systems in place to ensure everyone has the opportunity to thrive. I invite you to learn more and join my campaign at reginafordane.com and work with me to bring a sustainable, equitable, and vibrant future for Dane County.
Melissa.
Thanks so much for everyone who attended today's forum. I am Melissa Agard, and I am thrilled to be a candidate for Dane County Executive. I know that we need a proven leader who is a collaborator and unapologetic about getting things done for the people of our community. And it's clear to me from the countless conversations that I've had with folks that there is a desire for all of us to come together to solve generational problems and continue moving Dane County forward. By protecting our democracy, investing in our workforce, and taking care of the most vulnerable folks who call Dane County home, we're going to be able to get that done. I'm honored to have earned the support of folks at all levels of government, including County Executives Parisi and Falk, a broad coalition of current and former mayors representing every city in Dane County, statewide electeds, legislators, local elected officials, and most importantly, my 4 sons. These folks know that I'm the leader with a proven track record who is committed to showing up, rolling up my sleeves, and being engaged with each and every one of you. I hope to earn your trust in your vote in this election and be able to serve you as the next Dane County Executive.
Thank you. Wes.
As a 26-year Dane County employee, manager, supervisor, and department head, it's my management experience that sets me apart from the other candidates. With 7 years of successful department budgeting, team building skills development, leading the management of the Rotary Foundation, whose assets grew by $3 million. That means people were willing to give. From the time I served as trustee, including my time as chairman of the board. Finally, I would just like to reiterate that the direct services that we provide demonstrates that our purchase of service agencies are some of our most valuable assets. And as Dane County Executive, I intend to keep it that way.
Dana.
So I'm not good at platitudes or esoterical statements, but here's what I'm going to tell you. I do this work. I do this work every single day with our communities, with our county agencies, with our people, with our department heads. These are relationships that have already been built and trust that is already in place. I want to be your Dane County Executive, not because I have a theory, but because this is the work that I already do. This is the investment that I have put into our community. And when I am in the community doing the work, the people are the people that lift me up and that say, this is where I want you to be. I don't need anyone else other than our community saying, here is where we would like for you to be. And that's what I hear from our community, because I'm the one that they see every single day in their lives. And I want to continue to be that on a broader scale. Thank you.
All right. Thank you to our candidates for participating in this forum, and thank you to Dane County Purchase of Services Committee for organizing it, and to all of you for attending. Remember, the primary election is August 13th. Early voting starts a week from today. Voters will narrow the field of 4 candidates to 2, and the top 2 vote getters will face each other on the November 5th ballot. Now you can cheer for our candidates. Thank you very much for being here. Okay, we're done.
I know, I'm like.
Thank you very much. Was it hot in here for you? I'm sorry.
I'm having
Just wondering, but they turned, I think someone took the cue because I felt the temperature go down. I think they turned the air conditioning on. So, well, I hope that, I hope it's brief and not intense. But.
Like I'm on fire all the time.
Sorry, but you did a great.
But I'm the only one that actually has the answer.
That is a little bit.